What's going on, everyone? Thank you for coming to watch this guide, guys. An update on some pretty intense, rounds of thunderstorms that we got going on across portions of Montana and the Dakotas. We're also talking about a big time tropical threat that we've got out there in the Atlantic. We're talking about a window of time for potential development. We're going to be talking about how tropical storm Debby or potentially even Hurricane Debby could be on its way. We're going to talk about what areas need to be watching the forecast, what areas need to be prepared. And so I've got all the latest details coming right up, right? So thank you for joining me here on this Saturday evening. We have a lot to talk about in this video as we're going to go over all the latest information on this upcoming hurricane threat, all right? But quickly, I just want to, go over what's going on in Montana and the Dakotas. We currently have a slight risk for severe weather that's extending from sections of eastern Montana down into Wyoming. I believe in, that general area. But you can already see that we do have our little storm system here. We could actually see a little bit of a center, popping up there with that low pressure. And then we can almost get like a comma-shaped look to it. So if that's happening, then we have a strengthening storm system. I think that what's going to happen if after that is we're going to get a little bit more of a enhanced threat for severe weather across this region, and then obviously we'll still get our severe weather up into Montana. But as you can see, no activity has gone into Montana as of about 5:10 Eastern, and then you can see we have a ton of tropical moisture that's just been thrown up into the into the southeastern United States, especially up in Missouri, where we also have a little low pressure signature right there with that comma shape. So a lot of moisture, a lot of rainfall, kind of just being pumped up into the southern United States. But I mean, look at this. Look at all this convection going on over in Florida. I think flooding concerns are going to be a huge issue, as well as up in here in Louisiana. I mean, we just have a ton of rainfall, a ton of moisture that's coming up there. So just don't be scared, be prepared, watch out for that. And now we'll go up here into Minnesota, where it does appear that we do have a little line of storms extending from areas near like Ontario up into Canada, and then just kind of goes down through north central Minnesota. Some strong severe storms definitely possible this evening. We'll see if this band, does anything, but I really wouldn't be too worried about that. So we're gonna head over here to our alerts and take a look. You really don't have much going on. Let me get back. That's where we should be. You don't have much going on, all right, but you do have an excessive watch going out for a good chunk of eastern Kansas there, pretty much the entire eastern half of Kansas. In that red shade, you have an excessive heat watch, all right? We're talking about some really hot conditions because you're just missed by the rainfall. The rainfall's just to your east, and so we're talking about big time, big time heat indices. All right, but then we go over here into the western United States, and as you can see, as we go into Utah and sections of western Colorado, and portions of southern Wyoming, there you have the red flag warning. That's in the pink shade. Anybody in the hot pink, that's where you have the red flag warning. That's just where there's a an elevated fire risk, fire danger. Wildfires. You definitely don't want to use anything flammable outside, but it's a big day for wildfires. We know that I know there's a few wildfires burning out there, so please just be aware that there is a pretty high wildfire risk because it's dry and it's pretty windy out there as well. Because you've got all the winds coming down from the north that's pushing into the backside of the storm. Because your storms like this, and you get rainfall on this side of the storm, but you get these dry, gusty winds that come in from the west, and basically that's how you get the fire danger to erupt. All right, but as you can see, we also do have some air quality alerts going out for sections of northern Wyoming, going into portions of Idaho, and then you've also got Washington State and Oregon State, parts of the state getting in on that air quality alert. That's in the gray shade. Other than that, you just have a few, flood watches down here in southern Texas. A few of these storms have been strong and severe. All right, so I would definitely watch out for that. You got a few flash flood warnings scattered across Florida, Texas, Louisiana. I mean, you saw that tropical moisture, that tropical rainfall. We've got to definitely talk about flooding concerns, and that's why we have the flood watches, warnings, and advisories. And finally, out here in this tan shade, I don't know if you can see that. We'll zoom in just a bit. And you can see out there into extreme southeastern portions of Wyoming, we do have a fire weather watch. All right, and so that's basically just showing us where the area for the highest concern for fire danger is at the moment. All right, so we'll take a look at the tropics here. All right, we haven't looked at this map in a long time. I know we've taken a break from looking at the tropics, but I know I did an update about 2 days ago, including the tropics, and that was on where are the tropics? What has happened? Well, we went the whole a big chunk of July without seeing any activity. We had no name storms since Beryl. We have had no name storms. We did have Chris that sneaked its way into Mexico, but since then we have had no activity. In fact, we haven't even had any tropical waves that have even popped up here on the National Hurricane Center as a threat for development. But we finally got one this morning. All right. As this morning, we have a little disturbance here as of 2 p.m. Today. All right, an area of disturbed weather over the central tropical Atlantic Ocean is expected to interact with approaching tropical wave during the next several days. Now, note that it's not expected to gradually just move over, over to the east. It's going to, continue moving there, but a tropical wave, an approaching tropical wave, is going to interact with the system. So that's very interesting. I don't think I've ever heard that from the National Hurricane Center, but what they're saying is that the tropical wave behind this storm is going to interact with it and strengthen it. You know how in severe weather we get a cell merger where you'll have one cell and then it'll be like a rain shower or a little thunderstorm developing to the south of it, and it'll kind of merge together and sometimes strengthen it. That's exactly what we're seeing here, but with tropical waves. All right, but development of the system is possible while it approaches the Lesser Antilles during the early to middle part of the week and moves generally west-northwestward or near the Greater Antilles towards the later part of next week. So here it is now. This is the X shows where it is now, and notice how the cone, it does take this up right through the Antilles. It doesn't take this through the Lesser Antilles, for the most part. You got the Northern Lesser Antilles in there, but really the Greater Antilles. But then you've got Cuba up there, and then obviously the Bahamas. All right, so basically what they're saying is that it's here, and they're expecting it to take a track to go somewhere through here. So we have to figure out, is it going to go, first off, we have to figure out how strong is this going to get? Is this even going to develop? Because remember, as of right now, we only have a low 30% chance of development of the system. But after we figure out if it's going to develop or not, we have to figure out if it's going to go like this into the Gulf of Mexico. So remember, these Gulf waters are extremely hot, so anything can happen if a storm gets its hands on the Gulf. Or could it make a little bit of like a sharp turn to go up the East Coast, and we could actually see like a coast scraper like we saw with, past storms like Isaias. We just got to figure this out. We got to just make sure that we're keeping everybody prepared. All right, so we're gonna take a look at the NAM 3K model real quick just before we get into that, because there is a little disturbance that's not going to earn tropical characteristics, but it does have some subtropical characteristics, and I think that it's worth noting because it will actually interact with land in the northeast. All right, so we did have just a pretty minor severe weather event move through the northeast, and the remnants of that kind of came off the coast of the Carolinas, and they formed this low. They popped off this low, and this low began to rotate and get a spin, a little bit of a defined, not that well defined center of circulation, but it's there, and models are now picking up on this, and they're all agreeing. So we're going to take a look at the NAM, see what the NAM is showing. This is the 12Z run of the NAM. So here's our system. It's down here. You can't see it because it kind of goes off the edge of the map, but we'll take this out until it comes back in. Notice how this is already down to 1,009 millibars by 4 in the morning tomorrow morning. So early tomorrow morning, 1,009 millibars, you could argue that this is trying to get down to tropical depression status or equal to tropical depression status, because the only fact that this is not going to become a tropical depression is because the National Hurricane Center has not issued any forecast for this disturbance, any potential chance of development. There isn't any there. So that's why we know this is not going to be a tropical depression or a tropical storm. It's just going to be down to the same millibars equivalent to what a tropical depression or potentially a tropical storm could be. Now, a tropical storm, it's probably a little bit lower, so this will be equal to how low a tropical depression will go. So then you wake up tomorrow morning, and this thing's down to still 1,009 millibars. It's got a little bit of a, rotation there with that with those isobars there, so a little bit of a spin. And then look at these little outer bands starting to form there. I mean, they're there. All right, that could definitely happen where we get these little outer bands to form, and it's this little itty bitty baby storm that's kind of floating its way through the Atlantic, but it's getting caught up here in a trough. All right, and that trough is kind of, it's riding the jet stream and it's going like this, it's going like that, it's going like that. So, the trough is looking like something like that. Now, if this trough wasn't there, and this high pressure, which it's currently not noted on the map, but there is high pressure here. There's high pressure somewhere around here. There's low pressure here. All right. Sorry, let me get this off your map. But there's high pressure around here. There's high pressure ridging. That's around the trough, but this trough is kind of, it's a low pressure system itself, that's bringing these thunderstorms that you can see across portions of Tennessee and Kentucky. It's bringing them to the east. But this trough, what they do is they'll kind of swing by, they'll dip down in the jet stream, and they'll kind of swing by, and they'll actually pick up tropical storms, any tropical depressions or whatever, hurricanes, and they like to take them out to the east. All right, and so because we have a trough here, it's going to pick up the storm, and hopefully what we'll see this storm try to avoid land as much as possible before, or hopefully the trough gets there before the storm, gets all the way over land. But this is by, afternoon tomorrow. You have a 1,008 millibar low approaching what looks to be the New England coastline, and we take this out to about the evening hours, and it's starting to rain, all right, across, the Cape Cod area of Massachusetts and stuff, and it's starting to rain out there. It's gonna rain pretty lightly, but we could see rains already falling out there by 8 p.m. tomorrow. And we take this out a little bit further, and it really weakens down to almost nothing. I mean, you got a center of circulation. I mean, you almost do have outer bands. I mean, you could argue that this is one here, this is one here. I mean, this is a pretty good one. You got one down here, so extremely unorganized storm, but I mean, look at these isobars. They're circles that are kind of just wrapping around each other. So you got a little bit of a spin going on, with this storm. And so, I mean, I definitely think that this could earn some subtropical characteristics. But I mean, I just think it's worth noting because we could actually get some pretty good rainfall from this. And you see, it does bring some thunderstorms into New England, southern New England, Long Island, my area. Definitely could get some rainfall with this, as this kind of just brings a lot of tropical moisture, tropical rainfall on the coast. And look at Maine. Maine's getting, poured on a little bit. And take a look at Eastern Mass. I mean, this is probably going to ruin, I'm afraid to say this, but this is going to ruin your Monday morning. And, we could actually even have a possible flooding threat because you see this rain gets pretty heavy. So, I would certainly watch out for this, guys. I mean, this could even bring some relatively gusty winds, high waves. It's really nothing crazy, but I just think it's worth mentioning because it will bring some impacts that not many people are going to be expecting because nobody's really talking about it, but it's there, and it's been there for a while now. And this oncoming trough kind of, it's going to hopefully bring the storm a little bit farther off to the east, but, you get the idea. And we'll quickly take a look at the, hold up. Let me take a look at the GFS here, and we'll look at the 500 millibar height anomalies. If I can get this, I think I need to get this to the continental U.S. There we go. So yeah, that's that trough. That's kind of scooping through. If you want to put it that way, but it's gonna kind of pick up the storm, or really it's not a trough because. All right, I didn't explain it in the best way possible, but we've got going on the setup for this is that you've got a trough that's swing by in the west coast, and that's not really going to interact with this. What you've got is you've got high pressure ridging. That's what you've got up here. All right, and the reason why you're seeing the storm try and go north, and then it goes like kind of goes like that. The reason why you're seeing a track like this is because this high pressure ridging is going to block the storm from getting farther inland. So that's why this is going to kind of scrape the coast, if not kind of go a little bit more farther inland. So that's the setup that you've got now. All right. So I apologize for not doing that right. I had to look back at the models. Should have done that in the first place. But this is the setup that we're talking about. This is why we're going to see this storm kind of just float into the coastline, and you can see, I mean, as it moves up into New England, this high pressure region actually gets a little bit stronger. So that's why this storm. That's why this storm's gonna kind of just float its way onto the coast. But that's the driving setup and the driving pattern that we've got now for the storm to, you know, move with. So that's basically what we've got. All right. So we're going to take a look at the rainfall quickly from this storm. This is the 12Z NAM 3 kilometer model, so the same model we looked at just for rainfall here. I mean, you could see you get a hefty, 1 to 2 inches, maybe I could argue, 1 to 3 inches for some parts of southern New England. Here, you got, a lot of spot uh, different areas that are getting different amounts of rainfall. So localized amounts of up to 3, maybe even perhaps 4 inches of rainfall at the high end amount. That's definitely possible. But overall, we see half an inch to an inch. I think that's going to be the average. But look how much this thing is dumping before it gets closer to land. I mean, this previously will be dumping like 5, 6, 7. I mean, you could argue 8+ inches before it's on the coastline. But once it makes a technical landfall, I mean, you're just going to see a lot of numbers that are going to climb up to about around an inch, maybe a little bit higher. But definitely some potential flooding impacts from this storm that's going to come on shore. That's definitely something to make mention of. But watch out if you're in New England. All right, so we go back to we'll take a look here at the GFS. We're gonna go back to that tropical wave, that little storm that had the potential to develop. All right, and so we're looking at the GFS here. We're gonna take a look at the GFS, the European model, and the Canadian model for what they're showing with this tropical wave. Do they all show development, and where they show development, where they show the storm's going to go? We have to figure that out. All right, so we're going to start with the GFS here, and so this is the tropical wave. This is the tropical wave that's behind the actual storm. This is the actual storm here. All right, that's the actual storm. This is the tropical wave. All right, and so I want you guys to watch as these two are going to kind of connect, and what's going to happen is once they get around here, then they're going to strengthen according to the National Hurricane Center. Now, at this point, we only have a 30% chance of development through the next 7 days. Yes, that can definitely go up, and we're just going to have to, wait and see. But that's what I need you guys to watch, all right? So we take this out. We'll take this to about midweek, so go 5 days out. So it should be the 3rd. We'll take this out to the 2nd. So by the 2nd, all right, what you've got is this little area of precipitation that's kind of it's moving its way through the Greater Antilles. All right, it's moving its way toward the Bahamas, and really the GFS on the 12Z. So at this point, so far, doesn't show much as we get into the night of the 31st. All right, it really doesn't show much with the storm. It doesn't even have a low pressure signature. It's really looking pretty weak. And we take this out a little bit further, and I mean it's still there. It really just doesn't do much. And the 12Z run on the GFS, it really just doesn't show anything. But then you look at the 6Z. All right, what does the 6Z show? Well, the 6Z has this thing continuing to move through, the Greater Antilles. All right, and it's got a little bit of a circulation there. It's 1,014 millibars, so pretty weak storm, but it makes its way through, and it finally gets down to 1,006, and you all of a sudden have a tropical depression looking storm that's located just over Cuba, and all of a sudden you're in the Bahamas, and you're thinking, wait, like what just happened? Well, you finally just got a tropical depression on your hands by 8 p.m. on August 1st, and then you take this out a little bit further, and this makes its way south of the Bahamas, kind of scoots its way in between Cuba, the Bahamas, and the Dominican Republic, and then it does this little weird thing where it goes south of the Florida Keys. It actually goes through the Florida Keys, but it goes south of the actual peninsula, and it makes a little sharp turn, and as a 969 millibar low, which you could argue is a Cat 2, maybe, just maybe a Category 3 hurricane, it makes its way into Florida. It makes landfall in Florida, right around the same area that Ian hit back in 2022. Now, you the only thing I want to make sure with this video is that you're not going home and telling your friends, family, uncle, grandparents, whatever, that a Category 3 hurricane is going to slam Florida. That's not what's going to happen, all right? This is one run of the GFS. Things are going to change. I would be completely I would be completely shocked if this is exactly what would happen. Those are the chances. Like there is it's pretty much impossible for this to happen. All right, so this is just one scenario from the GFS, but it does show a technical landfall in Florida, and this would be around the southeastern United States as a 969 millibar low. So what you can take away from this is that the GFS is showing a strong hurricane somewhere around the southeastern United States around August 5th, August 4th. All right, that's what you can take away from this. And this kind of scoots its way up through Georgia and into the Carolinas, and then gets taken up by a trough. This, yes, is a trough, but that's basically what happens. All right. So that was the 6Z GFS. We move on to the European model. This is the 12Z Euro. All right, and we take this out to we'll take this out to the 29th, and you already have a 1015 millibar low. So pretty good, agreement with the GFS and the European model. So we can now take off this area in the MDR. We already at this point can say that we have pretty good confidence of what's going to happen there. Now we have to get into July 30th and the 31st. We have to see what's going to happen from there. All right, so we take this a little bit further. It gets caught up in a lot of tropical moisture, which is going to be good for the storm in terms of strengthening. Now, what I want you guys to pay attention to as well is you've got high pressure here, all right? And you've got, you've got high pressure that's going to steer, winds, going to steer the upper level wind pattern. It's going to steer, the precipitation and the storms. It's going to steer them away from the center, the core of this high pressure. This is a ridging that's going on. So if the storm takes a northern track, this is probably going to force it to go up this way, and that's when you put the East Coast at risk. And if you look at the GFS had this a little bit further to the east, and that's why you could see the storm was able to make its way farther south and kind of cut through there and then make that sharp turn. All right. So a lot of different scenarios are definitely possible, and that's why we have to look at different model agreements and stuff. See if we have model agreement. But just this area of moisture just continues to come through, and it struggles. I mean, it's really struggling here. It's down to 1,016 millibars, 1,014. So not the strongest of storms, obviously, but we get to the morning of August 2nd, and we finally get that low pressure signature back, and this quickly gets back down to 1,008 millibar low as it makes its way over the Bahamas. All right, this is 162 hours out, very, very far out. But what happens after that is it strengthens pretty quickly, and it kind of undergoes rapid intensification on the 5th to the 6th. And this is as far as the European can go on the 12Z. But we end off with a 966 millibar low, so a stronger hurricane than the GFS, just off the coast of the Carolinas there. 965 millibar low. So you could argue that that's a high-end Cat 2, low-end Cat 3 hurricane. Right? And once again, please don't say that this is going to happen. This is just one run of the European model. But the European model wants, a hurricane to go up the kind of East Coast direction. GFS wants more of a Gulf Coast, Florida kind of direction. So really, this is just a question mark. Where is it going to go after it gets through the Antilles? If it's even going to develop, that's what we need to figure out. I think that, we can... we could say that that's definitely the main question that we have to answer. But we finally, for the last part of the update, look at the Canadian model. This is the Canadian model. We're going to take a look at what it's showing for the system, and you can see that it's here it is. I mean it's over here, and it's moving through the Antilles, and I mean, I'm just surprised because all of the models have this moving through the Antilles very weak. All right, it's a very weak storm shown by all of the models, but they all move through they all move through the Antilles. They all have this storm move through the Antilles, but very weakly. But it just doesn't stop chugging. All right, it's still going. Even after this makes it all the way through the Antilles and then gets to Cuba, and then boom, it pops off 1,006 millibar low after moving through all that land. I mean, I know these islands are small, but look at the Dominican Republic. It's the same size as the Dominican Republic. So I mean, it's pretty surprising that all the models are showing this continue to maintain its very low end strength, but it continues to kind of move through and it impacts the western tip of Cuba. And it's a strengthening storm down to 1,001 millibars, and now you wonder, what's going to happen here because you've got high pressure that's way off to the east, just like the GFS was showing. Does that open up for the storm to go, up the east coast? Or I guess in this case, just turn east and go into Florida, just like the GFS was showing? Or do we see the storm kind of maintain its track and just continue to go up towards Louisiana and the Texas coastline? We have to figure that out, like the Gulf Coast. And we take this out a little bit farther and does exactly that. We put this in the southeast. It gets down to a 985 millibar Category 1, Category 2 hurricane by August 5th. August 5th, really, the timing for this storm has been nailed by the models. The models completely agree with one another on the timing of the storm, 100%. They're agreeing pretty well on the track. Obviously, the Euro's kind of got its mind of its own, but the Canadian model takes the same general track as the GFS, but then takes us up into the Gulf Coast, and this impacts the panhandle of Florida, and then the coastal regions of Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama as a 977 73 millibar low hurricane. All right, so we now can take away from all of this, looking at all the models, that they're all showing a strong hurricane somewhere between August 4th to August 6th. Sadly, they all show the storm impacting land as a hurricane. All right, what does the Canadian model show? The Canadian model is showing a Gulf Coast hurricane moving up towards the panhandle of Florida and then impacting the coastal regions of Mississippi and Alabama. All right, what does the European model show? The European model shows it's going through the Bahamas, goes up towards the Carolina coastline, and the latest from the European model, the farthest it goes out, shows it just right next to the Carolina coastline. And then we'll see what it does after as we get later into the week, so we can get more model run time to see the future track of that after it makes its way right next to the coast of the Carolinas. And then finally, what does the GFS show? It continues to move through the southeast and then finally gets into Florida as a hurricane. All right, so that's all I got for you guys. Thank you so much for coming to watch, and I'll see you guys in the next video.